My name is Lee. By the way, all my presentations of all the stuff that I am talking about today, I created slides for them and I hosted them on Speaker Deck. So if you think like, oh, the code examples or the stuff that Lee is showing today, I want to read that back tonight, you can. Yep. So this next session, I'm going to talk about why you should upgrade your Ext JS 5 applications and how you can support touch or tablets. I mean, yeah, I think it's the most important reason to upgrade your existing applications, your existing Ext JS applications. Yeah, I mean, we have the crisp theme. We have new themes in Ext JS 5 that you can use for touch. We also have some components. I talked today, or I explained today about routing and the developer productivity, the new architecture, and I think that's indeed fine for us developers. But for the end user, I think the end user, yeah, he doesn't mind that the developer was happy with creating an architecture, because at the end you create just one single JavaScript file, all concatenated, and that is what you, yeah, host on your web server, and yeah, your end user, he can see how the architecture was built anyway. But what the end user can see is if his application is running on a tablet, yes or no. So yeah, with Ext JS 5 we can do this. I think it's very important because we live in this multi-device world. We all have portable devices, whether it's your phone, whether it's your tablet. Maybe you're running applications on a media center or on a smartwatch. You can do it. Nowadays, you can do it. If you have a touch interface or you have a browser, you can probably run apps on it. And yeah, this is also something that for Sencha is very important. And that Sencha saw, like, yeah, our applications should work on tablets. And now you can tell me, and you can say, yeah, well, Lee, I have an existing Ext JS 4 or Ext JS 3 application, and it works fine on a tablet. It works fine when I open it on my iPad. That's true. You probably can run your existing applications on a tablet, but there are like many things that are out of the box, or there are many things where these apps are not optimized for, and this is stuff that is included in Ext JS 5, and I will talk about that. If you take a look into this picture here, I see it's a bit fuzzy, but yeah, it gives you the idea anyway. These grid rows, yeah, they are too small. We call that fatty fingers, right? That you tap something and you mistap. I mean, how many of you guys have experienced that already before? That when you open an app on your smartphone and you see some links, this is not an app that was not optimized for mobile, and you tap on the link and you tap by accident the wrong one because yeah, there was not much white space around these links or buttons. So that is something, yeah. If you open an existing app, there's not enough white space. The buttons are too small, the icons are too small, grid rows are too small. In this application, I have a chart. The chart is too small, first of all. Second, yeah, I cannot interact with the chart because the chart can only listen to mouse events, probably. The grid probably won't perform that well. There might some strange behavior happening when you click on these sorting columns. Yeah, overall, I mean, and that kind of makes sense because this app was never meant to run on an iPad. It was built for running on a desktop, and it's designed for mouse and keyboard. So it works perfectly on a desktop, but it won't. Yeah, well, it's not optimized for tablets. When MC Hammer would say, "You can't touch this," right? I love MC Hammer. Yeah. I especially love his clothes. Yeah. So why do you want to upgrade to Ext JS 5? And why won't you use Sencha Touch instead? How many of you know Sencha Touch? Yeah, a lot, I see. I mean, I get this question often, like, okay, so we can create mobile applications with Ext JS 5. Why would I use Sencha Touch instead? Well, there are some differences between both frameworks. And I think the biggest difference is that Sencha Touch was made for phones. And you can see that because in Sencha Touch there is a platform switcher, like, and there are device-specific style sheets. So when you open your app looks like an iOS application or it looks like an Android application. There's this platform switcher that detects if you're on Android, and it uses the Android theme or it uses the iOS theme or BlackBerry theme. It was made for offline support, and it has all components. But it also was only made for touch, so it doesn't support mouse and keyboard. That is something that works in XJS5. XJS5 was designed originally for desktops, so we do have mouse and keyboard support. But now with the new release, we also have touch support. So that is one thing. We have touch support. You can use XJS5 for applications that contain like lots of data. XJS5 also still supports Internet Explorer 8 and 9, and it has special components that were originally made for desktop, but now you can use it on touch environment. So there are like many reasons why you want to choose XJS5 instead. And I usually say if you have already an existing application, say it's Ext4, it's probably much easier to upgrade to XJS5 than start over in Sencha Touch. That's one thing. When you create a big application, big enterprise application that needs to support keyboard and touch, XJS5 is the way to go. For any other reason, if you say like I need to make a mobile app that looks like an iOS app, and I want to host it in the Apple App Store, then Sencha Touch might be better. But I think for most reasons, XJS5 would be actually very good. But officially, we don't support phones yet. Officially. Because it runs fine. Because exactly, what does that mean officially? Well, that means that we did not test it. I mean, it runs on my iPhone. It probably runs on the latest Android devices, but it wasn't tested for every Android device with every unique hardware combination. So that is why Sencha says, like, officially we don't support phones yet. If you want to create phone applications, you can use the other framework. But we're slowly getting there, right? Because these frameworks, like you can see that already, XJS5 has the same data package sharing as Sencha Touch. It's sharing the same chart package as Sencha Touch. Yeah. We're going to talk about this. Sorry? I don't know. But I think, you can see that things are slowly merging to one thing. So I don't know the roadmap. I think at SenchaCon we will probably hear more about that. But for now, I will just stick to my opinion. What I say if you have already an existing XJS4 application and you need to make a tablet app, it's probably wiser to use XJS5 for that. If you need to support mouse and keyboard and touch, XJS5. If you need to create a phone, that choice is up to you. If you only need to make it for iPhones, then you can test it yourself and see how well it performs, because it does perform well. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the event system, about the new themes, some of the components that you can use, particularly for the touch environment, and responsive design. And at the end, I will talk a little bit about how can you now run this app on a mobile device. And if we have more time left, I can also dive into and show you one of my own applications that I ported to mobile. So let's start with the event system. And the new event system, we moved away from the attached DOM listeners that were attached. It was like a delegated event model, and now I will show you the difference. So in XJS4, what happened was, and we call it event capturing. Like, for example, if you have a form and you tap on a button in the form, then the event will be captured all the way from the window, goes into the form, and then it will be fired from the button. So the button will fire the event as last. And we changed that in XJS5. In XJS5, it's all the other way around. We call it event bubbling. Oh, actually, it's X5 bubbling. That's a slight typo. Yeah, so it's the other way around. You tap on the button and it bubbles all the way up and will be fired as last from the window. And we chose this for two reasons. One reason is performance. Yeah, it reduces the number of DOM interactions. So yeah, for example, if you would run an existing Ext4 application on a tablet and you would tap a button on this Ext4 application, it would register the event as a click, but with a 300 milliseconds delay, I think. And that is something that we solved with XJS5 because of event bubbling. We had because of performance reasons. Yeah, it's much faster, so it behaves immediately. So responsive is one of the reasons. And the other reason is that we want to support touch gestures, like swipe or pinch to zoom, long press or drag, touch start, touch end. All these gestures, we want to support that now. And we are supporting that. And actually, this is very nice because within the framework, all this event normalization, so all these events will be translated automatically to touch events. So if you, for example, have a button and in your existing app you use click, but you upgrade your Ext4 app to X5, then X5 knows that it's a tap event on a tablet and it knows it's a click on a desktop. So it does that automatically. Things like a drag or swipe, it calculates that. You probably notice when you where on the screen you tapped it and where on the screen you left your finger. That is how Sencha calculates that. What we now need to know is we can use these events if we want to. If we don't want to, we just leave it, just click, and Sencha will figure it out. Yeah. Yeah, we have some new teams. XJS5 ships with a couple of new teams. And these teams, they extend from the Neptune team. As you can see now, Neptune team was a new team in XJS4. It was a more the modern team. Now we have a couple of more teams for you. We have Crisp, Crisp Touch, and Neptune Touch. Neptune is the touch version of the original Neptune team. And Crisp, I will show you that in a bit. So this is Neptune Touch. As you can see, the grid rows, they have much more white space. The grid rows are much bigger, so it's better to tap. Also, you can see that the icons are bigger. There's more white space around it. It just looks nicer. It just touches nicer, right? It feels ready that you can touch it. And this is the Crisp team. I always say iOS-like because I think it looks like iOS, kinda. You can change the colors if you want to. This is Crisp Touch team. We also have a normal Crisp team. Then the grid rows are smaller, just like Neptune. Now these all extend from Neptune. If you want to create your own custom team, you can do that with the Crisp team. I would probably take Neptune or Neptune Touch as a starting point, because the Neptune team at especially like if you look into the titles, light color on dark background, versus a light application with dark color on top. So if you want to make it unique, your team, this is probably a better start point. Otherwise, it just looks another version of Crisp, but just with a different color. I will show you that later. I can show you one of my own applications. I created an app that connects to Spotify, and I made it look like Spotify. So it looks like totally like black theme with nice green buttons and such. When you have such a team and you want to use one of these themes, then you need to include that in your project, and especially for the people that are using X3, the way how you change or how you switch themes in XJS5 is not via the index HTML. It's like an absolute no-go to set your style sheet in the index HTML. We do this in app.json, and I will tell you why. But here in the app JSON file, you can just specify the theme property and then the name of the theme that you're using. These themes, you can find them in the packages folder of Sencha. You see there the Ext Neptune, Ext Neptune Touch, Ext Crisp. You see them all listed there. You hook it up. If you create your own theme, if you created your own theme package, you also need to hook that up to your app JSON. Now, as soon as you write this down in your app JSON file, you need to refresh your application, which you do on the command line. So you open your command line tools and then you run Sencha app refresh. And then it restarts the app with the new theme. You don't need to build it. It takes one of the pre-compiled themes for the out-of-the-box themes. If you have your own theme, created your own theme package, yeah, then you might need to build. Yeah, the reason why this is set up in app JSON is because when you would open your index HTML, or when you would open your DOM, so your browser DOM, you see that there is a style sheet used, and the style sheet is called bootstrap.css. And bootstrap CSS, that is not the theme that has been served. No, because if I would open bootstrap CSS, I can see that there's an import, and it imports the style sheet that was hosted in my production build folder. Or if you created a test build and and you have no production build folder, then it's hosted there. But you import it from one of the build folders. And the reason why is because you might use images in your theme, or you might use fonts, and you are using all these paths. And what you want is that all these paths are pointing to the same file. So that all the paths are the same across all the environments. So that is the reason why it works like this. Yeah. Then there are also some changes made in some of the components. This is like a very slight or a little change, but it's very nice because now it's an HTML5 framework. So we can also make use of HTML5 features. And one of these HTML5 features that we're using is the input type. That is what you see here. I set the input type to email. And now if I would open my application on a tablet, on iPad, then I get the email keyboard. Now I could also set the type to date or datetime, and then I get the native date picker. I think that only works for iOS. I don't think that works for Android. I think on other devices, maybe on the Windows Phone, it might work, but it won't work on Android for datetime right now. Yeah. It's just for showing the keyboard, yeah, or the native picker. I mean, yes. Yeah. And you don't need to wrap your app in a native package for that. It's just an HTML5 feature. Yeah. So that's one thing. Here, there are some. This is really nice in charts. So when you use a chart, you can set the interactions. So I'm setting here my interactions to pan zoom, and I think we will see it in a bit that it is moving. Yeah. So you can see, imagine that the arrow was my finger, because I'm running it in my simulator, and I'm using pinch to zoom. Yeah, and I can just drag and slide the chart. That's really nice. What also is very nice is that I could easily customize my chart, so I could just give it the color of the rest of the app. Yeah. If you want that, you need to set up an interactions object. I think it's the same in Sencha Touch. You set that. There's one other important difference in Ext JS 5, and that is that as soon as you want to use charts, whether it's the old Ext JS 4 charts, because you can still use them if you want, or if you want to use the new chart package, Sencha charts, you need to set it up in app JSON. Out of the box, it's commented. It's commented out. So it's out of the box. You won't see any charts. If you're coding a chart in your project and you build, you probably get a build error because you need to enable the chart package first. So you can do this in your app JSON file. You go to the requires object, and there you set up Sencha charts. And then again, you need to Sencha refresh the app. So you type in the command line Sencha app refresh, and then your chart will be available. Yes. Only for charts, yeah. If you want to use it for panels and such, you need to code that yourself. But you can, because we have the event system, so yeah. Yeah. Feel free if I'm explaining something and you don't understand it or you have more questions. I mean, I can answer it on the fly. There are also some other mini changes. For example, tab panels. What you often see in mobile applications or in tablet applications is that, especially on iPads, I think, that you see a tab panel interface, and it's docked to the bottom with these icons in the middle of of the tab panel button. You can do that now. You just say dock to the bottom, and you just hook up an icon, and you align the icon. And this is also something that I often see in applications, especially on phone applications. Then I see a segmented button. In Sencha Touch, we already had a segmented button. In Ext JS 5, we finally also have a segmented button. And you could use this segmented button also for creating your interfaces. So you could, for example, create a stack of cards. You stack them on top of each other, and then you dock a segmented button to the top of your interface. And just make sure that every button that you tap, just moves one of these cards up front. You could do that. Yeah. Something else that is new in Ext JS 5 are feature and device checks. So these are these checks that are native from HTML5. So you can test, for example, if your browser supports SVGs, or if it supports HTML5 Canvas, or whatever. I mean, you can just write these feature or device checks. And this one, offline proxies, that's not really new in Ext 5. I think we had already local storage proxy and session storage proxy in Ext 4. But I think now that we're talking about mobile, it makes so much more sense to use these proxies. Because maybe when you have like a settings screen, you want to save that on your mobile device first, because maybe there's no online connection. You want to save it first on your device and later sync it back to the internet, to your web service. So that's important. You can do that stuff. This is something I'm very proud of. This is what I really like, and that's responsive design in Ext JS 5 applications. Basically what that means is like an application for every screen. So you have one code base, and you make sure that this one code base optimizes the experience for every the screen size that you're running it on. And we can do that. This responsive design comes from the web design world. So in traditional web pages, so not in Ext JS, but on websites, what you would code to create responsive design is first of all, you would need an HTML5 doc type. And second is that you would probably use these media queries to detect the screen size. And you would work with relative units and percentages and fluid designs and such. And then you would code the style sheet like this. I mean, although this is a great approach for websites, we said but we're Sencha, we want to do it different. We want to stick to JavaScript because that's what we like. So if you want to create responsive design, you do not need to deal with style sheets. You can if you want. You can still put it in your style sheet. But if you're really working with dynamic views and such, it's probably the best way to do it the Sencha way. And such responsive design, we call that responsive config. It looks like this. So you create a responsive config in your app, in your view. That can be on the viewport, or that can be on any child view if you want. You need to set the plugin to responsive because it comes from a plugin. And then you can pass in some of these criteria. That can be a criteria like landscape or portrait. can also be a criteria like, oh, the screen size needs to be 800 pixels wide, or else it does this something else. And then in that object, you can code your own configs. These need to be Sencha configs, so they need to have getters and setters available. If it doesn't have getters and setters available, you can probably create it yourself by putting it in a config object. But yeah, you can create very advanced layouts this way. And later I will show you one of my own examples where I created like on a desktop interface, it had a tab panel on the top with a floating button. And when I opened it on a small device, say on the phone, then suddenly I had 4 tab buttons and no floating button and window anymore, because yeah, that didn't make sense. Yes. Yeah, it's not CSS. It's just yeah, it's just a like a. Yeah, I don't think this is a great approach either. I will show you in my own code how I solved this, because you can put it somewhere else. Yeah, because what you don't want, and that's exactly, yeah. If you would put it here like hard coded in your view, and then I have another view and I need to create again a responsive config, and I make a typo. I say by accident bigger than instead of smaller than. And then suddenly weird behavior are happening, because on the one screen behaves like this and the other screen behaves the other way around. So that's why personally I would never put these, I would just create the criteria check somewhere else, maybe in a mix-in, and reuse that everywhere in your code. So you're sure that your criteria is always the same. But again, I will show you that at the end of the session. I can show you a real code example. Yeah, here you see a little video of that, I think. No. Yeah, here they opened it in the iPhone simulator. And you see that the menu is docked to the left in landscape mode, and it's docked to the top on portrait mode. You can do that with responsive design or responsive configs in Sencha. Yeah. So basically what you did is here, what happened is they created a responsive config, and then they say on landscape, because that's the criteria, then the region for the panel, this panel is west, and otherwise the region is north. Yes, north. Yeah, so these are the out-of-the-box criteria that you can use: landscape, portrait. Landscape is always true on a desktop, and portrait is always false on the desktop. Yeah, that's just that you need to know. And white, or that means basically it's true when the width is bigger than the height. And then you have also tall, which means like if the width is smaller than the height of the screen. And these are just to hard code your width and height. You can do that as well. And as last, we also have platform checks. So also based on a platform, you can create responsive config. For example, if you have the chart with the pan zoom, for example, you could create a platform check. Check if it's running on a phone or if it's running on a tablet. Then you use the pan zoom, and otherwise you use mouse zooming in charts. You could do that. Yeah. They cannot get combined. Well, I mean, yeah, you can use multiple criteria in your app in your responsive config, of course. But if you want to make like whatever unique situation, whatever custom criteria, you can use responsive formulas for that. So that's probably where you could look into. And responsive formula is basically that you can create your own criteria. This is what I did. I created a small screen, a big screen, and I also have a criteria touch device. And the touch device is just based on a check. I just say like, oh, if my device has the feature touch, it returns true. Okay, then touch device is true for this criteria. And then I can use in my responsive config, I could say, touch device, interaction is bound zoom. If you want to do that, you, I think that should be fine, because if I look in here, I'm also passing in an, yeah, I mean, it's basically just a true or false check. So I guess that probably would work if you say touch device and big screen. But I mean, yeah, you need to test it. I think it might work. If not, if it doesn't work, could just create your own formula for that. Then you say like my touch device, and then you say you test it first on this, and then you test it on that. Yeah. And usually the best practice for working with responsive design is I first inspect the content, and I'll make sure that I know exactly what will be in my app. And what's nice, you don't need to work with Photoshop anymore, because basically you're designing in your desktop or in your browser. That's where you're designing. You're just resizing all the time the window to make sure that you have all these breakpoints. And yeah, some people say like start with designing the small interface. Yeah, for Sencha applications, I mean, Sencha applications are already very, like all the classes and views are already modular. I designed applications both ways. I have apps that I had already in desktop view, and I sized it down. But yeah, it's probably wiser to start with small, because then you're really focusing on what's important, and then you spread it out. And yeah, I mean, when you have more space, more screen space, means that you also can put more component in the space. So also things that are not so important for a small screen, you could put that on a bigger screen. Oh. Now this is really nice, that responsive design, and oh, sorry, yeah. Sure. Sorry, with yeah, yeah. You could, yeah. What you could, well, Sencha doesn't do anything out of the box. It's up to you to customize that. But what you could do is you could set a responsive config there, and you just make the check if it's touch device or if it's small screen. And when it is a small screen, you just show a selection of columns, I think. Yeah. There's nothing out of the box, I think. No, you need to code that, but you can code that yourself. I mean, Sencha can't detect that, of course, what column is most important. But yeah, you can do that with the responsive config. Yeah. Now, I mean, back, like, I think last month I was explaining to everybody, like, yeah, responsive design, yeah, that's the way how you do it in XJS5. Sencha Touch does profiles, but XJS5 does responsive config. Till this week, because my coworkers, they released in XJS 5.1 also profiles. Basically, they just migrated the whole app folder, the whole app into the core. So not only data packets is sharing with Sencha Touch code, no, also the application sub packets in our framework is shared by Sencha Touch. So that makes that gives us that we now also can use profiles. And I don't know if you guys know what profiles are, if you've worked with that in Sencha Touch before. But with a profile, for example, if you have like if you open your email client on your phone, you would see like a whole list of emails underneath each other. And when you tap on one of these emails on your phone, it will open a new screen. It will push a new screen to the top with the email. And when you would open this same email application on your tablet, then you have the list docked to the left, and then you have the email body always in the center of the app. Now, those types of experiences, you can easily create that with a profile. you can just create new views that belong to a profile, and it's not only views, you can also create like particular logics. So you can create stores, you can create controllers, you can create views, and you all bind it to a profile. Let's say in this example we have two profiles. We have desktop profile and tablet profile. We hook that up in our ext.application, and then you create the profile file, which is tablet.js in this case. It needs to be located in the profile subfolder, and it needs to extend from ext.app.profile. Then you can create, you can need to set up which views, which controllers, which stores, which models belong to this profile. So in my case, it only has a tablet main. And then you create a check, and this check is very important because that is how Sencha detects if this profile is active. So here, this is just a device check. It checks if it is a tablet, and if it is a tablet, then it is active, returns true. So if we have a list with all these profiles, it knows like, oh, the first one that results in true, that will be the active one. So in this case, it will only serve me the tablet main interface. And if I create also a profile for a desktop, and I need to make sure that that one also returns true when it's a desktop, then it will showcase me the desktop interface. That's a good question. When do you use what? With profiles, with profiles, you're not really limited to. Okay, with profiles, you're not really limited to only configs, because responsive design, there you have to. Yeah, you need to have all your properties set in a config. It needs to have getters and setters. You don't need that with profiles. So basically, your code with a profile stays much cleaner. It's much smaller. You can really decouple your views. So you can really make a unique tablet view, and you can make a unique desktop view. I would probably go this way, make profiles first, and say that you have the profile desktop. And you can create additional checks. For example, oh, if the desktop is bigger than 1000 pixels, then you also see this. And if it is bigger than 1600 pixels, then something else happens, right? So you can just make it, you can specialize it better. That's what I would do. The, I mean, these solutions this is already merged. I mean, in 5.1, I mean, you can use profiles and you can use responsive config. So it's up to you what you use. You can use both. Hmm. Yeah, it detects it on the when you create the application on launch. So on launch, it checks which profile is active. So if you create a build and you open it on your browser, then it sees desktop. If you open it on your mobile device, it's phone or tablet. Oh, you sorry. Just correct me if I'm wrong. You mean that if I create a mobile app, that I don't include code of my desktop? Is that what you mean? No, it will always include that. It will only always include that code. So your your JavaScript and build will be a bit bigger, but yeah, it's not in your memory, so your phone won't load it. So it's just the end package is a bit bigger. Yeah. No, this is only for yeah, JavaScript. Yeah, you can create these breakpoints in your style sheet, and it probably only makes sense for like very little changes. For example, if yeah, I can just to like to specialize something like make the button a little bigger on a phone or something. I mean, in general, like for all things that is dynamic, you would just do it the Sencha way. So you basically won't use media queries or breakpoints in your style sheet. You probably will only do it this with profiles or responsive config. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. On launch. Yes, exactly. Well, in this case, this is my in this case, my main contains the viewport. So I create two viewports. I create a tablet viewport and I create a desktop viewport. It loads it there. But I could hook up multiple views here if I wanted. And I could also hook up stores or controllers there. If it's a controller, it would be a global controller though. But yeah. Um, it's in your app. Yeah. Um, no, this one will win from the app. Profiles will win. So if you have, for example, if you set your views to desktop.main, and then you also load in, because you hook up your profiles, that's what you do here, and the tablet is true, then that one will win. So it will take that, yeah, main.js. But this is something you need to test because you could run into problems with that. Just make sure that every check is correct. Yeah, because if you would have, for example, two, yeah, say I have two profiles that both have the same check, that both have a check that returns true, the profile that was loaded first in the list, that one will become activated. So just make sure that your checks are correct. Yeah. Are there more questions based on responsive design? Yeah. One moment.
When you show your next slide,
Yeah.
you say you hook up many views for one profile. And my question is it possible to work only with one view in that
Yeah.
profile? And the children?
And the children are the same. Yeah, you could do that.
And the children know how to behave in different profiles?
Yeah, but if you set that up in your main.js, so let's say in your main.js, you create the viewport, and on a desktop it's a border layout with a west and a center, and on a tablet it's a border layout with north and center. Yeah, it's using the same childs, and the childs know where it gets positioned because of the viewport.
Okay, but the difference in the border layout I have to configure here.
No, you would configure that in the viewport, in the main.js. So you create two viewports. You create one in the subfolder tablet and one in the subfolder desktop. And based on the profile, which one is active, then it knows which view package it will take. Does that make sense? I will show it in, well, I mean, I can show it later if you come afterwards over. I will show you that in, I don't have it in an XJS 5 app yet because it's so new. But I can show it you in Sencha Touch, how it works. Yeah.
Is it possible to load different themes based on the profile, like Crisp and Crisp Touch?
No. because the themes are hooked up in your app JSON file, so you cannot do that. But if you, let's say, if you have like specific styling that you want to use per profile, I would probably put that in my style sheet, so you can assign different CSS classes on components. You could detect that with responsive design, or you can detect that with profiles, put different CSS classes on it, or assign different UI mixins. Yeah.
That's kind of complicated. So I need for every profile own build of it, right? So I mean,
No, no, it's all included in the same build. This is just on creation of the app. Yeah. So you don't need to create multiple. You don't need to create multiple builds. It's just one build, and it detects it.
oh no, I mean the theming. For example, if I'm using for a tablet and for an iPhone,
Yeah.
and also at the same time for a website.
Yeah.
So we also have some issues that there are some certain users which has more theming as others. For example,
Yeah.
completely different themings.
Yeah.
So we do need like kind of dynamically.
What you need is a platform checker, right? That Sencha Touch has. We don't have that
Oh,
in
okay.
XJS 5.
And there's no solution, or maybe like.
You can, well, what you probably could do is you could open the Sencha Touch code and see how they created it, because you can. It's probably easy to merge.
That's a good tip.
Yeah, but I mean, for now, the general solution will be to put all these CSS classes in your style sheet and just assign them based on a responsive design check, or based on profile check. The advanced way, or the best way, would be the platform switcher, what Sencha Touch has, that it serves you the correct style sheet based on environment. Just type in their code. I mean, they're merging over everything. You probably can do it yourself. More questions? Okay. Yeah, then the last topic that I would like to look into, that is how can you bring your app to a mobile phone, or to a device, to a tablet or whatever. And there are a couple of ways what you can do. First of all, you can test your application in the simulator or in the emulator. If you want to test it on your simulator or emulator, then you need to have your software SDKs installed. So for iOS, you need Xcode, which only runs on Macs. You need the Android developer tools for your Android builds. For Windows, if you want to create an app for the Windows Phone or the Windows tablet, then you use Visual Studio on Windows 8 Pro. And BlackBerry uses the BlackBerry 10 SDK. And then you can make use of their own simulators. And that's the easy solution. Another solution what you could do is you could create a build. I mean, I assume you guys know how the build process works, but if not, I'm just going to explain it very quickly. But as soon as you run Sencha app build on the command line, what it does, it takes all the Sencha classes that you used in your app. So if you had a grid in your if you had a grid and a chart in your app, but not forms, then it will not take the Sencha forms. It only takes grid and charts, and it concatenates that. It will also concatenate your own custom classes. So all the classes that you defined yourself, it will also grab all those. And then it will concatenate that all into one single JavaScript file, and we minify that till it's like extra small. That will be the JavaScript build. All our themes are written in Sass with its preprocessor, so it needs to compile to production-ready CSS code, and so that's also what happens. It creates a CSS file for you in your package, and then you have an index HTML file and the app JSON file and your resources. That all will be one build package. This is what you could host on your web server. So you can deploy that there, or you can deploy it on your local host if you want to test it. If it's just for trying it out, you can create the build. And then, if you want, locally. You can navigate with your mobile device. You need to make sure that they are on the same network. Then you can navigate to the IP address of your computer. Yeah, needs to be on the same network, needs to connect to the same computer. If you, I think when you're using Apache or XAMPP, or I think mostly for Apache service, when you use that, I think there is always a HTTPD config file. And that config file, I think out of the box, it will probably already listen to your local host. But if not, you need to specify that. And it's anyways good to know because, for example, I was like a couple of weeks ago at the public workspace and suddenly I saw somebody writing messages on my local website. And I thought, how that happened? He probably figured out what my IP address was and was just browsing through my local host to see which apps I was running on. Which I don't mind because I only make Sencha apps, so it was a nice promotion for me. But yeah, I mean, it's good to know. Check your HTTPD config file, and there you can specify to the port or to the path that you need to listen to. And once this is set up, you can browse with your mobile phone to the IP address of your computer, and then you run your app on that one, on your device. This is probably the question that most people are interested in, or I get this question all the time. Can I also deploy my Ext JS 5 applications to native? Yeah, you can. Actually, Sencha also makes it easier for you because we have PhoneGap and Cordova integration. In that integration, you can find it in the app.json file. So when you open your app.json file, there's probably already some sample code that you can comment out. But it looks like this. It has a target set. So in my case, I had the target set to iOS because I'm creating an iOS build. Then you need to tell which packager you're using. And I'm saying I am using PhoneGap, but I could also use Cordova. Cordova and PhoneGap are basically the same, but PhoneGap is a commercial product from Adobe, where Cordova is from Apache. It's open source. It also has more plugins, I think. So you can either choose one of them. You need to have it installed on your computer, Cordova or PhoneGap. And you need to install it on top of Node.js. Once you have that all installed, if you want to make a local build, you also need to have, again, the SDKs, the developer SDKs on your machine. So Xcode, Android tools are the ones that you're using. And yeah. Here you can set if it's a remote build or not. So if you want to build it locally, then you set remote true. And then yeah, then it will build it from your local host, and then yeah, it takes the developer SDKs. And otherwise, it will use the cloud service, which I'm going to showcase you in a bit. The ID, that is the name of your ID. I think this is also in the iOS App Store. It needs to be the same path, so the identifier. And this is the name of your app. That needs to be the name of the app that you specified in your Ext application. Now, once you have this written in your app.json file, then you can run Sencha app build space target. So that's, in my case, iOS. Sencha app build iOS. And then what happens next is that that Sencha CMD will automatically create a native package for me. It does that via, in my case, PhoneGap, and with my iOS, my Xcode tools. Now, such a native build basically is just a wrapper. It basically just uses the web view in a native app, and in the web view, it is hosting the Sencha build folder, so the web build. So it's basically, yeah, it's not a, yeah, it's more like a hybrid app. Why do you need native builds? If you want to make money and sell your app in the Apple App Store, for example, then it could be wise to make a native build. You can also choose to create a native build because you want to make use of device-specific APIs. Like if you want to talk with the camera, or if you want to get access to the camera or get access to contacts, stuff like that. Then you need to have a native wrapper around it. So you can do that with PhoneGap or Cordova. This is the PhoneGap cloud build. So if you enable remote building, Then you browse to, well, you need to set it up in your app, the JSON file first. And you need to have an account on PhoneGap Cloud Build. I think if you create a free account, you can only build one application, or you can hook it up to your Git repository, yeah, your Git repo, or you can let Sencha upload the package with CMD. And what's really nice about this cloud service is that it will build it for you for all these devices, and you do not need to have all the SDKs installed on your machine, which is something I really like, because like installing Android tools is always a pain, I think. So this is really cool. Once you have your app uploaded to your cloud build, you get like this QR code, and you can scan it with your phone, and it directly opens the app on your phone. So that's really cool, or on your tablet. Except for iOS, obviously. On iOS, you need to set provisioning. So iOS developer, are there iOS developers here? Couple. You guys might know how it works, right? Yeah, you need to whitelist and provision it, yes. But once you have it set up, you can upload a provisioning key there, and then you can build it, and it works fine. Yeah. And the last thing, and this is something I will talk about more at the end of the day, it's also possible to deploy your app to Sencha Space. And when you upload your app to Sencha Space, you can also make use of device APIs like the camera, stuff like that, because Sencha Space basically is also a native wrapper. But more about this later today. Before I want to show you some code, so let me go to some questions. Yeah. Yeah, it works different than in Sencha Touch, because in Sencha Touch you would set it up with keys and stuff. We don't do that anymore. Oh, no, well, not in XGS 5 at least. If you want to make an Android build, then you would first of all start with setting the target to Android. You can use PhoneGap or Cordova. Yeah. Then you set the platform to Android based on if you want to use the cloud service. You set this to yes or no, and then you build it. I think that should be more than enough. It will work. Then when you have PhoneGap, especially on locally, it will also create a config XML file. In the config XML file, you can set more things like keys and things with icons and screen sizes. That will be probably the file that you need to look into. Yeah. Yes, there's a platform folder in your PhoneGap build. If this is interesting for you and you want to figure this out, I would say take a look into my weblog, because I created a blog post about this, how you can create the build. And I mean, if you just follow the steps, it should work. I laugh because with this kind of stuff, it's always tricky. Because if you have a setting wrong on your computer, then yeah, it's not working. And yeah. More questions? Last question. Okay, let me quickly show you. Is that okay? Yeah. Okay, then I'll quickly showcase some of my own code. Now, the internet is not really fast enough, so I cannot show it with data. Let me see. Whoop. Yeah, actually I want to mirror it. Yeah, that's what I want. Okay. So, yeah, it looks a bit off because of the screen resolution. Okay. All right. So this is my my Spotify app, and this is how it looks on a desktop. On a desktop, I can I can click. I mean, this data comes from Last.fm. It imports all my music library from Last.fm, and I can directly play it in Spotify if I want. Now the internet is a bit slow, so it won't show you all the nice images and such. But this is how it looks on the desktop. I have a settings button here, and in the settings button I can set up my Last.fm username, and then it knows from which data I need to load in my app. Note also the tab panel here, and note the image and the button there. Now, I did this with responsive design because profiles back then when I created this app didn't exist in Ext 5. But now see, if I resize my app and say it will be a phone, you see here's the breakpoint. See? It created the breakpoint. Now the button is not floating anymore, it's part of the tab panel. So here's my settings screen. I don't see the image for the cover anymore, because I don't need that, because there's no space. My Spotify button is docked to the bottom. Yeah. Also the tab panel looks different. It doesn't contain the icon, or it doesn't contain the label. Now, how did I do that? I did two things. First of all, I created my own mix-in, and I said that what I explained earlier today, the reason why I put it in a mix-in is because I want to create the check only maintained on one place and not on multiple places, because then it only can go wrong. And here I just create a static check. I did it in a static method because I might want to use this function also somewhere else in my code. Basically, I am checking if the orientation is portrait or if it's a phone. And when that's the case, then I should serve the small screen. So then is small screen returns true. I created the config small screen. I created the responsive formula. So here's the formula where I am pointing to the method in my static, and it knows if it's true or false. Then I create the responsive config. So I say landscape, and then if it's landscape, I need to set small screen to false. If it's otherwise, it sets it to true. That's part one. So then I have the mix-in. I can include that anywhere in my views where I need to work with responsive design. And I did a couple of things. First of all, I include the mix-in. That's what I do here. Then I create an after render function. And in the after render function, I am checking, I need to make sure that update small screen gets triggered. When update small, this is the magic. Here is where I'm building my interface dynamically. So basically if it's a small screen, so if that one returns true, then I have 4 items in my tab panel. Otherwise I only have 2, and I have a floating button with the window that shows. And I need to make sure that it always, when I am resizing my screen, first removes everything and then adds it. Otherwise I would end up with hundreds of tabs. So I do that, and that's basically it. So that's the trick. Questions about this? I think this is the last question, but go ahead. Yeah, responsive config is possible in Sencha Architect. Yeah, I mean, I obviously did a lot of stuff here, so this is a bit more advanced. But it should be possible in Architect, and I assume that as soon as Architect 5.1, the new version of Architect for 5.1 is released, it will also use profiles.
There's no time that you can show us a little example how we realize this in Architect with the new version, or the new version is still coming?
The new version needs to come for profiles, so I cannot show you that. But responsive config is already there. Just search in your config panel responsive, and then it pops up, and it works the same as in the code. You set the criteria, and then which setting will be affected. Yeah, you're welcome. I think this is time. Okay, if you have more questions, feel free to come over.